On the morning of January 15, 1947, a mother taking her child for a walk in a Los Angeles neighborhood stumbled upon a gruesome sight: the body of a young naked woman sliced clean in half at the waist. Not something anyone would expect to see on their morning walk. The body the mother discovered was of the 22-year-old Hollywood aspiring girl, Elizabeth Short, also known as Black Dahlia. Hello, and welcome to the Grim Files. In today's episode, we'll explore the unsolved murder of Elizabeth Short, also known by the press as Black Dahlia. Before diving into the murder, let's explore and better understand Elizabeth's past. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29, 1924, in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts, the third of 5 daughters to Cleo Alvin Short Jr. and his wife, Phoebe May Sawyer. Elizabeth's father was a United States Navy sailor from Gloucester Courthouse, Virginia, while her mother was a native of Millbridge, Maine. The Shorts were married in Portland, Maine, in 1918. The Short family briefly relocated to Portland in 1927, before settling in Medford, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston, that same year. Elizabeth's father was working on building miniature golf courses. Unfortunately, the 1929 stock market crash hit, and he lost most of his savings, meaning he could not continue his project. In 1930, his car was found abandoned on the Charlestown Bridge, and it was assumed that he had jumped into the Charles River and died. After this traumatic incident for her family, Phoebe May Sawyer, Elizabeth's mother, began working as a bookkeeper to support the family. In her childhood, Black Dahlia had been troubled by respiratory problems, bronchitis, and severe asthma attacks, and she was forced to undergo lung surgery at just 15 years old. After the successful intervention, the doctors suggested she periodically relocate to a milder climate to prevent further respiratory problems. Her mother sent her to spend winters with family friends in Miami, Florida, for the next 3 years. She dropped out of Medford High School during her sophomore year. In late 1942, shocking news hit Short's mother, who received a letter of apology from her presumed deceased husband, which revealed that he was in fact alive and had started a new life in California. In December of that year, at age 18, Elizabeth relocated to Vallejo, California, to live with her father, whom she had not seen since she was 6. At the time, her father was working at the nearby Mare Island Naval Shipyard on San Francisco Bay. Unfortunately, things did not work well in their father-daughter relationship, and in January 1943, after many arguments with her dad, Elizabeth decided to move out. With her mother living far away and her father unavailable as a living option, Elizabeth had to begin a new chapter in her life. Short took a job at the base exchange at Camp Cook near Lompoc, California, briefly living with a United States Army Air Force sergeant who reportedly abused her. She left Lompoc in mid-1943 and moved to Santa Barbara, where she was arrested on September 23 for drinking at a local bar while underage. Juvenile authorities sent her back to Massachusetts, but she returned instead to Florida, making only occasional visits to her family near Boston. As you can see, Elizabeth had a really tough life and faced many challenges while still young. Unfortunately for her, this was only the beginning, and things would soon take a turn for the even worse. While in Florida, Short met Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr., a decorated Army Air Force officer of the 2nd Air Commando Group, who was training for deployment to the Southeast Asian theater of World War II. She later told friends that Gordon had written a letter to propose marriage while he was recovering from injuries from a plane crash in India. She accepted his offer, but Gordon tragically died in a second crash on August 10, 1945. Just when she thought she could finally live a calm and happy life, fate struck her hard. Short spent the last 6 months of her life in Southern California, mostly around Los Angeles. Shortly before her death, she had been working as a waitress and rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. Short has been variously described and depicted as an aspiring or would-be actress. According to some sources, she did in fact have aspirations to be a film star, though she had no known acting jobs or credits. She was just like most of us, working in hopes of achieving her dream one day. On January 9, 1947, Black Dahlia returned to her home in Los Angeles after a brief trip to San Diego with Robert "Red" Manley, a 25-year-old married salesman she had been dating. Manley stated that he dropped the aspiring actress off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, and that she was going to meet one of her sisters, who was visiting from Boston, that afternoon. There are reports that staff of the Biltmore recalled having seen Elizabeth using the lobby telephone. Not long after, she was allegedly seen by patrons of the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge at 754 South Olive Street, approximately half a mile or 600 meters away from the Biltmore. On the morning of January 15, 1947, a mother taking her child for a walk in a Los Angeles neighborhood discovered her body sliced clean in half at the waist, on the west side of South Norton Avenue, midway between Coliseum Street and West 39th Street, in the neighborhood of Leimert Park, which at the time was largely undeveloped. The body was just a few feet from the sidewalk and posed in such a way that the mother reportedly thought it was a mannequin at first glance. Despite the extensive mutilation and cuts on the body, there wasn't a drop of blood at the scene, leaving her skin a pallid white, indicating that the young woman had been killed elsewhere. Short's face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears, creating an effect known as the Glasgow smile. She had several cuts on her thigh and breasts, where entire portions of flesh had been sliced away. The lower half of her body was positioned a foot away from the upper, and her intestines had been tucked neatly beneath her buttocks. The corpse had been posed, with her hands over her head, her elbows bent at right angles, and her legs spread apart. Near the body, detectives located a heel print on the ground amid the tire tracks, and a cement sack containing watery blood was also found nearby. An autopsy of Short's body was performed on January 16, 1947, by Frederick Newbar, the Los Angeles County coroner. Newbar's autopsy report stated that Short was 5 feet 5 inches or 1.65 meters tall, weighed 115 pounds or 52 kilograms, and had light blue eyes, brown hair, and badly decayed teeth. There were ligature marks on her ankles, wrists and neck, and an irregular laceration with superficial tissue loss on her right breast. Newbar also noted superficial lacerations on the right forearm, left upper arm, and the lower left side of the chest. Short's body had been cut completely in half by a technique taught in the 1930s called a hemicorporectomy. The lower half of her body had been removed by transecting the lumbar spine between the second and third lumbar vertebrae, thus severing the intestine at the duodenum. Newbar's report noted very little bruising along the incision line, suggesting it had been performed after death. The lacerations on each side of the face, which extended from the corners of the lips, were measured at 3 inches, 75 millimeters, on the right side of the face, and 2.5 inches, 65 millimeters, on the left. The skull was not fractured, but there was bruising noted on the front and right side of her scalp, with a small amount of bleeding in the subarachnoid space on the right side, consistent with blows to the head. The cause of death was determined to be hemorrhaging from the lacerations to her face and the shock from blows to the head and face. Newbar noted that Short's anal canal was dilated at 1 3/4 inches, 45 millimeters, suggesting that she might have been raped, although there was no presence of sperm in her body. Short was identified after her fingerprints were sent to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and her fingerprints were on file from her 1943 underage drinking arrest. Immediately following the identification, reporters from William Randolph Hearst's Los Angeles Examiner contacted her mother, Phoebe Short, in Boston, and told her that her daughter had won a beauty contest, only to get as much personal information as possible from her. After getting all the information out of her, they told her that her daughter was in fact dead. The Examiner and another Hearst newspaper, the Herald Express, later sensationalized the case, with one Examiner article describing the black tailored suit Short was last seen wearing as a tight skirt and a sheer blouse. The media nicknamed her the Black Dahlia, and described her as an adventuress who prowled Hollywood Boulevard. Additional newspaper reports, such as one published in the Los Angeles Times on January 17, deemed the murderer sex fiend slaying. The ensuing investigation was led by the LA Police Department. The FBI was asked to help, and it quickly identified the body, just 56 minutes, in fact, after getting blurred fingerprints via sound photo, a primitive fax machine used by news services from Los Angeles. Short's prints appeared twice in the FBI's massive collection, while more than 100 million were on file at the time. The Bureau also had her mug shot in its files from when she was arrested for underage drinking and provided it to the press. On January 21st, a person claiming to be Short's killer placed a phone call to the office of James Richardson, the editor of the Examiner, congratulating Richardson on the newspaper's coverage of the case and stating he planned on eventually turning himself in, but not before allowing police to pursue him further. Additionally, the caller told Richardson to expect some souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail. 3 days later, a suspicious manila envelope was discovered, addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers, with individual words that had been cut and pasted from newspaper clippings. Additionally, a large message on the face of the envelope read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow." The envelope contained Short's birth certificate, business cards, photographs, names written on pieces of paper, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen embossed on the cover. The packet had been carefully cleaned with gasoline, similar to Short's body, which led police to suspect the packet had been sent directly by her killer. Despite efforts to clean the packet, several partial fingerprints were lifted from the envelope and sent to the FBI for testing. However, the prints were compromised in transit and thus could not be properly analyzed the same day the packet was received by the Examiner. A handbag and a black suede shoe was reported to have been seen on top of a garbage can in an alley a short distance from Norton Avenue, 2 miles, 3 kilometers, from the crime scene. The items were recovered by police but had also been wiped clean with gasoline, destroying any fingerprints. On March 14th, a handwritten suicide note, scrawled in pencil, was found tucked inside a shoe amidst a pile of men's clothing at the ocean's edge near the foot of Breeze Avenue in Venice. The note read, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that, or this. Sorry, Mary." The pile of clothing was first seen by a beach caretaker, who reported the discovery to lifeguard Captain John Dillon. Dillon immediately notified Captain L. E. Christensen of the West Los Angeles Police Station. The clothes included a coat and trousers of blue herringbone tweed, a brown and white t-shirt, white jockey shorts, tan socks, and tan moccasin leisure shoes, size about 8. The clothes gave no clue about the identity of their owner. Police quickly deemed Mark Hansen, the owner of the address book found in the packet, a suspect. Hansen was a wealthy local nightclub and theater owner and an acquaintance at whose home Short had stayed with friends. According to some sources, Hansen also confirmed that the purse and shoe discovered in the alley were in fact Short's. And Toth, Short's friend and roommate, told investigators that Short had recently rejected sexual advances from Hansen, and suggested it as a potential motive for him to kill her. However, Hansen was cleared of suspicion in the case. In addition to Hansen, the Los Angeles Police Department interviewed over 150 men in the ensuing weeks whom they believed to be potential suspects. Robert Manley, who had been one of the last people to see Short alive, was also investigated but was cleared of suspicion after passing numerous polygraph examinations. Police also interviewed several persons found listed in Hanson's address book, including Martin Lewis, who had been an acquaintance of Short's. Lewis was able to provide an alibi for the date of Short's murder, as he was in Portland, Oregon, visiting his dying father-in-law. A total of 750 investigators from the LAPD and other departments worked on the Short case during its initial stages, including 400 sheriff's deputies and 250 California State Patrol officers. Various locations were searched for potential evidence, including storm drains throughout Los Angeles, abandoned structures, and various sites along the Los Angeles River, but the searches yielded no further evidence. Los Angeles City Councilman Lloyd G. Davis posted a $10,000, equivalent to $136,453 in 2023, reward for information leading police to Short's killer. After the announcement of the reward, various persons came forward with confessions, most of which police dismissed as false. Several of the false confessors were charged with obstruction of justice. On January 26, another letter was received by the Examiner, this time handwritten, which read, "Here it is. Turning in Wednesday, January 29th, 10 m. Had my fun at police. Black Dahlia Avenger." The letter also named a location at which the supposed killer would turn himself in. Police waited at the location on the morning of January 29th, but the alleged killer did not appear. Instead, at 1 p.m., the Examiner's offices received another cut-and-pasted letter which read, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified." The graphic nature of the murder and the subsequent letters received by the Examiner had resulted in a media circus surrounding Short's murder. Both local and national publications heavily covered the story, many of which reprinted sensationalistic reports suggesting that Short had been tortured for hours prior to her death. The information, however, was false, yet police allowed the reports to circulate so as to conceal Short's true cause of death, cerebral hemorrhage, from the public. Short's personal life was publicized, including details about her alleged declining of Hanson's sexual advances. The Herald Express also received several letters from the purported killer, again made with cut-and-pasted clippings, one of which read, "I will give up on Dahlia killing if I get 10 years. Don't try to find me." On February 1st, the Los Angeles Daily News reported that the case had run into a stone wall, with no new leads for investigators to pursue. The Examiner continued to run stories on the murder and the investigation, which was front-page news for 35 days following the discovery of the body. When interviewed, lead investigator Captain Jack Donahue told the press that he believed Short's murder had taken place in a remote building or shack on the outskirts of Los Angeles, and that her body was transported to the location where it was disposed of. Based on the precise cuts and dissection of Short's body, the LAPD looked into the possibility that the murderer had been a surgeon, doctor, or someone with medical knowledge. In mid-February 1947, the LAPD served a warrant to the University of Southern California Medical School, which was located near the site where the body had been discovered, requesting a complete list of the program's students. The university agreed so long as the students' identities remained private. Background checks were conducted but yielded no results. By the spring of 1947, Short's murder had become a cold case with few new leads. Sergeant Finis Brown, one of the lead detectives on the case, blamed the press for compromising the investigation through journalists' probing of details and unverified reporting. In September 1949, a grand jury convened to discuss inadequacies in the LAPD's homicide unit based on their failure to solve numerous murders, especially those of women and children, in the previous several years, Short's being one of them. In the aftermath of the grand jury, further investigation was done on Short's past, with detectives tracing her movements between Massachusetts, California, and Florida, and also interviewing people who knew Short in Texas and New Orleans. However, the interviews yielded no useful information about the murder. The notoriety of Short's murder has spurred a large number of confessions over the years, many of which have been deemed false. During the initial investigation, police received a total of 60 confessions, most made by men. Since that time, over 500 people have confessed to the crime, some of whom had not even been born at the time of her death. In 2003, Ralph Astle, one of the original detectives on the case, told the Times that he believed he had interviewed Short's killer, a man who had been seen with his sedan parked near the crime scene in the early morning hours of January 15, 1947. A neighbor driving by that day stopped to dispose of a bag of lawn clippings in the lot when he saw a parked sedan, allegedly with its right rear door open. The driver of the sedan was standing in the lot. His arrival apparently startled the owner of the sedan, who approached his car and peered in the window before returning to the sedan and driving away. The owner of the sedan was followed to a local restaurant where he worked but was ultimately cleared of suspicion. Although he was never formally charged with the crime, George Hodel came to wider attention after his death when he was accused by his son, LAPD homicide detective Steve Hodel, of killing Short and committing several additional murders. Prior to the Dahlia case, George Hodel was suspected, but not charged, in the death of his secretary, Ruth Spaulding, and was accused of raping his own daughter, Tamar, but acquitted. Hodel fled the country several times and lived in the Philippines between 1950 and 1990. Additionally, Steve Hodel has cited his father's training as a surgeon as circumstantial evidence. In 2003, it was revealed in notes from the 1949 grand jury report that investigators had wiretapped George Hodel's home and obtained recorded conversation of him with an unidentified visitor, saying, "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out. Killed her. Maybe I did kill my secretary." In 1991, Janice Knowlton, who was age 10 at the time of Short's murder, claimed that she witnessed her father, George Knowlton, beat Short to death with a claw hammer in the detached garage of her family's home in Westminster. She also published a book titled Daddy Was the Black Dahlia Killer in 1995, in which she made additional claims that her father sexually abused her. 93, the book was condemned as trash by Knowlton's stepsister, Jolene Emerson, who stated, "She believed it, but it wasn't reality. I know, because I lived with her father for 16 years. Additionally, St. John told the Times that Knowlton's claims were not consistent with the facts of the case. As you can see, there are many theories, suspects, and confessions, but ultimately, almost all of them were deemed false, and to this day, the Black Dahlia murder remains a cold case. What stands out to me is how meticulously Elizabeth's murder was planned. Cut in half, carved a smile, and professionally cleaned. All these probably in a remote location, from which the killer had to transport her to that place, and set her body up in a really specific and inhuman position. It seems to me that either she was murdered by a really messed up person or by someone she knew. Someone who had a grudge against her and a strong hate. In my opinion, there are simpler ways to get rid of someone, but the person who chose to kill her seems to have done it out of vengeance and hatred. My theory is that she was killed by someone who she rejected in the past as a romantic partner, even though it still seems too much to me, or by someone really messed up. Not the most plausible and concrete of theories, but I simply can't find a good explanation. If you have any theories about what really happened, please leave them in the comments section. I'll read all of them, and give my opinion. The tragic story of Elizabeth Short, known to the world as the Black Dahlia, remains one of the most haunting and perplexing cases in American history. Her brutal murder not only shocked the nation but also highlighted the darker side of post-war Los Angeles, a city often idealized as a land of glamour and opportunity. The unsolved nature of her case left a void in justice, allowing the mystery to grow into a cultural obsession fueled by speculation, sensationalism, and morbid fascination. Elizabeth's story is a grim reminder of how society often reduces individuals to symbols, overshadowing their humanity. Behind the media moniker was a young woman with dreams, struggles, and vulnerabilities, whose life ended far too soon. The case also exposed the shortcomings of 1940s law enforcement and the public's appetite for scandal over truth, setting a precedent for how true crime would evolve as a genre in the decades to come. Even today, the Black Dahlia case serves as a lens through which we examine issues of justice, media ethics, and the vulnerability of those seeking better lives in a world that can be both alluring and unforgiving. Elizabeth Short's name may forever be tied to mystery and tragedy, but her story reminds us of the importance of seeking the humanity behind the headlines. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed my coverage of this case, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other true crime and horror videos. Let me know in the comments if you want me to dive deeper into all the suspects of the Black Dahlia murder, and I will put out a video about it. Have a nice day.